I'm gonna post the, oops, my map in the chat.
The first thing that we'd like to do, everybody, is find out how many of you actually had a chance to go out and take a hike before the fire started on Saturday. So if you'll click on the reactions button at the bottom of this screen with all the pictures, you can see a thumbs up. And if you actually got out there and took the hike before Saturday, give me a thumbs up. Great.
It counts about 8 or 9.
I was hoping it would be in the chat box and we could keep track of it, but it just shows up momentarily in the picture and that's it. We'll have to do that again, folks.
You can do it under participants and then the person says yes or checks yes or no under participants.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yep, thanks. Good idea, Jean, thanks. So all those of you who are just joining, if you'll go to the chat window and beneath the, oh, I guess you have to go to participants first, right? No? Yes. Click on participants at the bottom of your screen and you'll see buttons that say, a green button that says yes and a red button that says no. And what I'd like you to do is click yes if you were able to get out and take a hike at Heil before the fire started on Saturday, and click no if you were planning to go out this weekend and got shut out by the fire. That'll give us an idea of our audience and how many of you were actually out there. The other thing that we're planning on doing is referring to the story map and the blue and green and yellow and red and orange treatment areas. So if you'll get that up,
Could you pull that up on your computer? Sure.
So that you can refer to that. That'll help you follow along as we discuss what's going on out at Heil Ranch. We're going to wait just another minute to make sure that everybody who's trying to get on has had a chance to get into the Zoom meeting. Nate, do you want to describe what to do after you click on the link to get the map up?
Yeah, I could probably be, yeah, I can talk through it too. And if people think it would be a little easier, I can also share my screen. But basically, you're going to want to go into our chat, and we, Aaron and I have posted the link right there. So basically, click on that link, and it's going to pull you to a zoomed out version. And Heil Valley is located just north of Boulder. You'll actually also, I'm sure you'll see these arrows and emergency icons I put there to kind of just signal that it's closed for the foreseeable future. But once you get there, that will be exactly the map that we're talking about and referring to.
Okay, are we ready
I
to
lost it by clicking too quick and it went away. Can you post it again on chat?
Thank you.
Yep, will do.
Okay, Amanda.
Yeah. Well, good. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you back with us tonight. Again, my name's Amanda Carrico, and I'm the Interim Director of the Center for Sustainable Landscapes and Communities, which is the organizing body for this event, although of course it involved a lot of hard work from a lot of different participants and affiliates. So it's my pleasure to welcome you guys here again for the second discussion associated with our fire and forest management at the Heil Valley Ranch program. And so first, let me just say that, clearly our circumstances have changed very much since we met last. And I first want to acknowledge and send our support for the many families that have been affected by the fires of the past week, including the 26 families who have lost their homes and the many more that I know are evacuated and waiting really eagerly to see how this pans out and for these fires to be contained. So we send our thoughts and best wishes to those folks and to any of you guys in the audience today that find yourself under those circumstances as well. We wish you the best. Second, I want to take a moment just to express our gratitude for the many brave first responders and forest managers who've been working tirelessly around the clock for the last several days to keep manage these events and to keep us all safe. We know there's a lot of hard work and a lot of extraordinary coordination that goes into this, so we're very grateful for that. And in recognition of that, we're really exceedingly grateful to have Stefan Reinhold with us again tonight, who's, I know, been working many long hours over the last several days, and was able to still be here and share his experiences and his insights on what's going on the ground and sort of what the sort of events, how they're unfolding for us. So thank you, Stefan, for being here. We'll quickly get to our program. Before I hand it over to Karen for moderation, I just want to, for those who have just joined us, we're hoping to get a little bit of a sense of how many of you were able to go on the hike before the fires broke out on Saturday. So if you haven't already, if you could let us know that by under the participants button. If you push that, you should see a set of buttons that allows you to say yes or no, yes and green or red and no. If you could indicate one of those buttons to let us know whether you did or did not go on the hike, that will be helpful for our understanding of the situation. So thank you again, Karen. I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thanks, Amanda. And again, thank you to Stefan, who's been out there on the fire line for 5 days now, and for his willingness to make time for this evening so that we can all learn what he has learned by observing the fires and ask questions. We've decided that we're going to have a pretty open format to this evening's hour to allow as many as possible to get your questions answered. And Stefan, Stefan, I've forgotten your title. Forest Supervisor for Boulder County Parks and Open Space?
Senior Forestry Resource Specialist.
There you go. Who is the man who knows everything about the forests in Boulder County Open Space, and of course worked closely with Nate to make the story map possible. And so he's the man who knows what has been done out there over the last many years to try to treat the forest to survive these fires, and also the man who's been out there and has seen what has happened live on the ground. And obviously the conditions have been ideal for fire and not ideal for the sustainability of the forests in the condition that they were on Friday. So I'm going to turn it over to Stefan to show you some photos and describe the situation out at Heil now. And then we're going to go to Q&A. So if you have questions as you're listening to Stefan, please feel free to type them in the chat or make a note of them yourself so that you're ready to ask them as soon as Stefan finishes his overview.
Great.
Stefan?
Well, thank you, Karen. Like everyone said so far, the biggest concern and my thoughts are with the people that lost their homes. Never want to see that happen. It's tough. It's tough that when these things occur. So I think the way I'm going to do this is kind of give you kind of a timeline and a run up to what I saw and from my perspective, and I'm going to share some photos with you as well. But essentially, I was driving into Longmont, and I kind of look up towards the hills. This is about 1:15 And I said, huh, that smoke is not from the Cameron Peak fire. And then I was like, uh-oh. And then my phone started blowing up. Lots of messages like, there's a fire at Calwood. And so I coordinated with Nick Stremmel. He kind of runs our prescribed fire program. Coordinated with him, made my way, called Therese, called Eric, made my way to the Parks and Open Space building, got in the vehicle, started making our way towards the fire. And so now I'm going to share my screen here and kind of just going to show you what went on. And of course, I need to find out.
Damn it.
Can everyone see that? Not yet.
Not yet.
Right there.
Yep.
All right, good. So we were driving in on St. Brain, making our way towards the foothills. And when we first saw this at this point, we said, uh-oh, this is pretty bad. This is moving very, very quickly. One of the Parks and Open Space employees, Scott Golden, he's one of the foresters, and he was in Jamestown, and I was in contact with him. And we were texting back and forth, and we both said, this is going to hit Heil, and it's going to hit Heil very quickly. So I'm going to just slowly move through slides. I'm not going to spend time on every slide. I just wanted you guys to get a feel for what we were seeing. So we made our way over to we had to drive on 36, and we drove through where there was active fire already. And we made it to McGuckin's, and that's where staging was. And these are photos from McGuckin's hardware. So you can see, picking up a lot of steam really fast coming through.
It's the McGuckin's warehouse you're referring to, right?
Correct. It's the warehouse that's on 36, just south of Left Hand Canyon. And then it was then we needed to go in, and we had our assignment. Our assignment, because the fire had already jumped 36 by this point, our assignment right away was to drive out on Nelson and kind of do a loop around there looking for spots, making sure there's no other spots than the one where everybody was actively engaged. Driving through, already homes on fire. Tough, really tough to see. Barely could see anything looking out the window as we made our way down the street. Fire on other locations slowly burning down towards, because the wind at this point slowed a little bit. This is a little bit later there. And what we did, once we finished our patrols, our next step was we needed to get ahead of the fire so the fire couldn't cross over 36 anywhere else. And so what we started doing from Highway 36 is we started lighting a backfire. So I don't know if you can you see my pointer?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, right off the edge here, we're lighting to let fire back into the wind and back into the forest. Obviously this is grassland and shrubland in this picture. And then we had an engine there that would water it down on the edge. And so we're trying to build black lines so the fire couldn't be pushed across the highway or put embers across the highway. So we worked at this for a while. Just kind of another photo, here's the fire that we put on the ground right here, moving back. You can see that's why it's in a nice straight line over here, is because that's fire that we put on the ground. And there's somebody doing that right away. The engine following closely behind. So what we were concerned with is all along that 36, we were concerned with all the trees and shrub that were right up against the highway, because those are the ones you can see in this photo that are going to throw embers. And so that's why we were doing the backing fire, to try to make sure that we could control what was occurring rather than letting it just do its thing. Just more photos of that. And of course, this is actually now it's dark by this point. So we've been working at this for a while, and it's dark, and we went on. I worked till 10 o'clock, and the reason I stopped was because I knew that I was going to have to be at the incident command post at 6 a.m. the next morning to start figuring out what our job was from that standpoint. So this is it. This is right away. This is our first map that showed us the extent of the fire. And so you can
And
see
the wind speed on Saturday, Stefan?
So, and I don't have all that information. I know that it was at least 40 miles per hour sustained, but I don't have all the details of gusts or timing and how long that went through, because I haven't had a time to comb through any of the information yet. So I'm still in kind of active mode instead of kind of, thinking about what occurred. But if you look at this map, I'm gonna, this is the turnoff off the left hand. Here's the driveway into, the Gear Canyon driveway. Our parking lot area, the first parking lot area is located right about here. And then as you come on through, the second parking lot, the Lichen Loop parking lot, is right here. This was the treatment unit that we showed on the maps, the helicopter treatment unit. Across the road, right around here, is the meadow areas that we showed on the unit, and then this is where the hike ended, right there. So you can see it really affected a good portion, and I think the latest number was, I think it was 4,600 acres of open space was burned in the fire so far. This is where the caretaker's house is located, I think right around here. And then there were a couple private residences in here. The Oakes family has some property in there. So the next day, and I was actually working as what's known as a READ, which is a resource advisor. And the point of READs is to look at why they're doing firefighting operations, to make sure that we're also paying attention that there are still resources out there and resources that we want to protect. So if they need to put in a dozer line, we don't want that going through an archaeological site or through some rare plant area. And so we have all that information, and we can try to kind of steer the conversation. There was Nick Stremmel was serving as the other READ, and he was where they were going to be putting in dozer lines on open space, and I was located where there was kind of a mix between the possibility of a dozer line on open space or private land, and it was location. But I ended up actually up at Calwood. That's where the division that I was working for was. So I was scouting for Calwood. But I just wanted to show this photo because this doesn't even give it justice. But this is, first off, you can see the pink hue. That is retardant. So they put down the retardant to try to. It's a very soapy, wet to stop fire from moving. And so there was close to 200 feet wide of retardant drop along these boundaries. And my task for this day was to scout an area for the division supervisor to make sure to see if there was active fire, and to see if they could put in line, and not dozer line, this is hand line, to see if they could put in hand line in this area. So I hiked down a couple steep slopes to look at that. But what was interesting about Sunday morning is it was freezing.
Yeah.
And the grasses all had dew and frost on them. So anywhere the fire was burning in grasses, in many areas, it just stopped. The fire stopped. And so that actually really helped us. But I couldn't see, there was an engine down here somewhere, and I couldn't see them. They couldn't see me, but I could hear them. So it was kind of difficult day to make headway, because even though it was cool, and you had some safety concerns you had to deal with. So then after a half day, I was able to go and start touring and looking for resource damage, and joining Nick on the far end where they were thinking about doing the dozer line. And so, driving through like I said, the main parking lot area where the caboose and all that stuff is, everything's good there. There might be a little bit of pink retardant on the rocks, pink retardant on the structures, but they're all those structures were fine. Then when I got to the main parking lot, the bathroom's there, the picnic shelter is there, and they're in good shape. But the two things that were gone or damaged was, obviously the bridge burned, and then there was two bridges. This bridge completely burned to that point, and then there was the other bridge is severely damaged from the fire. But in the grand scheme of things, we have some green trees. So I can say, I like to think that it's from the work that we've done. So a lot of the thinning that we've accomplished, and putting prescribed fire on the ground. But I can't say for sure that is what caused it. But I think there's a strong correlation. It could have been, just the way the fire was burning. We could have just gotten lucky in certain areas. But some of these trees you'll see, you kind of see like this has a different hue to it, and those needles are singed, and most likely we will lose all those branches on this tree. This tree over here looks like it's singed all the way up, so there's a good chance we may lose that tree fully. So even though the appearance in some areas might be that we got good survival, over the next couple years we will probably see a good number more trees die from this fire, whether it's from singeing all the needles or having a lot of heat at the base, where the roots are. Saw a lot of snags. I don't know how this thing was still standing. It did finally fall today, but some areas were hit really, really hard, and some it seemed like the fire kind of just randomly went through. So this is going to be a good pocket, and this is an area that we did thinning, and an area that we followed up with prescribed fire. And so when we do prescribed fire, we're removing a lot of that fuel that's in the understory, and so maybe there wasn't as much fuel, and that's why these trees are surviving. There's going to be some good areas, but then you'll see, I'm trying to circle that area, but you can see some really heavy singed trees there. And while the tops may look green right now, there's a good chance we're going to lose that. This pocket right here, there's a good chance there's going to be an opening. So these are things that we're just going to have to look at and observe over time. This is on the back side. This is more of a grassland, shrubland area. So it's not that we're all burned down. This is actually over by Red Hill. And you can access this area, or you will see this area if you're on the Picture Rock Trail as you get really close up to the Ponderosa Loop and the Wild Turkey area. So this burned okay. This is actually what we would have wanted to see in a prescribed fire. So this is not bad here. This is right now, this is still where the extent is. We have where my pointer drops down over to 36, and they have a line to here. And then they have a hand line that comes all the way down along the burned boundary. So that area is pretty good. Turkeys were right back in there doing their thing, looking for cooked insects. This area is all the way up top, and near the Ponderosa Loops, where we had done prescribed fire in the past. And there were pockets of mortality, but it really wasn't as bad. And like I said, the turkeys were happy, even hanging out with the fire trucks there. So again, this little area looks like we're going to have some good survival. So that's a good story. But then you look at areas like this, and this is further to the west, and that is complete devastation. There is not a single tree that survived on this hillside. And there are a lot of areas at Heil that are going to be like this. Specifically the Marietta Canyon and the Plumley Canyon areas. They burned really, really hot. And that's really unfortunate. So this is where we're going to be concerned moving forward with erosion issues, regeneration issues. Do we consider replanting? We have a lot of questions and things we're going to have to answer over the next couple of years. Another small success story is we had a weather station out there that we use. It's a portable weather station. It's called a RAWS station. And when we were down at that McGuckin distribution center, we were on site, and the sheriff's office was there. Seth McKinney, the fire management officer, and one of his senior firefighters, Peter Koritz, was there, and me and Nick Stremmel, and we're standing there waiting to get our assignment. All of a sudden, we were like, "Oh, the weather station." Well, the weather station is we actually can queue it up on our radios, and it'll tell us the weather. So we typed in the numbers, and sure enough, it was still operating. So we're hoping that the data, we can download the data and actually kind of see what happened in this little area from the weather station data. Nothing. There's one little fuel stick that sits on the weather station, and it got a little singed, but other than that, no damage to the weather station.
Does it measure temperature?
Measures temperature, wind speed, relative humidity. It does a lot of different things for us. So
Wow.
wind direction. So we use it to prepare for our prescribed fires, and we had thoughts of doing prescribed fire this year, so that's why it was out there. So anyway, that's just kind of another little story there. You know, again, this is one of our trails, and we've got survival in different areas. Now, this is looking back onto the unit that we did our helicopter treatment on.
So this is to the east side of the main Heil Valley Trail.
Correct. Where my pointer is a little bit further that direction is where you would have crossed from the Lichen Loop Trail onto the Wapiti Trail.
Okay, thanks.
And so, you know, you can see all the trees we had near the top that we had saved didn't make it. That fire ran up that hill super fast. So let's go to the next slide here. We also had, I don't know if anybody that did the tour saw a big log deck there. We had 3 big log decks that we were going to use for our biomass facilities. Well, they are no longer. And it's pretty impressive how much they burnt down. We thought it was going to burn for weeks, but it's all burned up already. So it's a shame because we could have utilized that material. But we may have, if all those trees had been up by that cliff edge, there's a good chance we could have been sending embers really far over Highway 36 and had spot fires all over the place out there. So, you know, there's a chance we could have saved a lot of stuff on the other side of 36 by what we did here. Again, you know, you can speculate all you want, but there's no way to necessarily prove what occurred. This is from Highway 36, looking back up towards Likens Gulch and the quarry, Lukanen's quarry over there. We did the backburn here, and again, you know, we still got mortality, but it actually looks more like a prescribed fire than anything else. Here's the pink rocks I was talking about. So we'll see pink rocks to come. You can see this is the old Overland burn scar over here at the top, and you can see the slurry, the pink hue there is the slurry, and it comes down and around and hits this whole area. This is most likely, number one, that there's a meadow there, but this is most likely what saved the structures at the first trailhead. Again, nice pink jumps. So then, you know, you may have seen this on the website, some success stories. Our caretaker, you know, they had a rough time getting out, and they were pretty certain from what they saw that they were going to come back and there wasn't going to be any structures there. Sure enough, they came back. I don't have the photos of the barn, but there's an old historic barn there. There's the caretaker's house, and then there's this old cabin, and all of them survived. And we knew that they survived around 10:30 that night when the chief of Left Hand Fire Protection District drove in to check on them. And he was able to inform us that that structure survived, and also the 2 of the Oaks homes that were back in there survived. They did lose their barn and a cabin that was further up the hill. But we got some good information there. This is back at the trailhead again. You know, all that stuff near the trail, the trailhead survived. There was also kind of a nice story. So when the Oaks were evacuating, they actually had to leave a horse and donkey. I think they have 6 total animals, and they were able to load up 4 of them, but the other 2 would not load up. And it was so scary for them with the fire. The fire really was beating down on them. They had to say, we need to go now, and they had to leave the animals. Luckily, we don't know, nobody has any clue what they did, but they survived. They were able, and they were found the next day. So
It's such a wonderful picture, Stefan.
so I didn't take this one. These last few I did not take. But that was good news that they did not get trapped. There are a lot of people that came to help us. We had people from, they did what's called a surge, and they took people that were actually on the Cameron Peak fire, and they sent them to us really quickly. And then the incident command post was put at the fire training center for the City of Boulder's fire training center. And so this is where the briefings have taken place. But because of COVID, all the briefings are taking place over radios, and people are all in different areas. So it's a little different than a normal fire. But I just got a nice shot in the early morning, so I figured I could share that one. But I told you that the structure survived at the so here we are at the main trailhead, but you can see how much burned back behind here, and it's a good chance a lot of
While
these.
you're on that photo, Stefan, someone has asked whether these the infrastructure there at the trailhead and the parking lot, whether they were actively defended. You showed the red slurry back by the old structures.
This area was completely interior, and absolutely nothing was done.
Wow.
There's the roads. There's the road that loops around, and so there is a natural fuel break. So maybe the fire moved super quick through here, so it didn't have any residence time. There was some equipment that was in there to do some work on the parking lot, and I know that there was a firefighter that was in there and noticed some wood up against the equipment that was on fire and moved it. So this was probably like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And so again, that might have saved that equipment, but nothing was done around these.
Wow.
So we're gonna have some trees that survive. There's a sky crane in the background there that does water drops. But I can't tell you for sure if this tree is gonna live or not. My guess is probably not. And so that's the other side of it. You can see more green in that branch of that tree, or the branches up here. And so if you've got that green, there's going to be a better chance of it surviving. Here's a photo of the damaged bridge.
Yeah.
But again, you see some good green on some of these trees on the other side.
Yeah.
This is pretty close to where the Lichen Loop Trail meets up with the trail to cross the Wapiti Trail, and just kind of looking back up towards the canyon, you could see, the whole hillside here is lost. And I don't want to be, I want to be honest with what we're seeing, that even though this looks like it has needles and might be alive, there's a chance we lose a lot of these trees as well. And so we just got to keep that in mind as time changes here. This tree had a lot of branches near the ground, so that's probably why it's really torched out. We talked about that at the last meeting. There's a close-up of it. Then there's some areas that surprised me. This is a flat area. Why did this have so much fire intensity? And obviously, I think this is where it's just above the Marietta Canyon. So the fire probably came roaring up the hill and hit this pocket, and it was just too hot for it. But again, some mixed survival. Big burned out pocket here, but some good green down through the middle on this photo. our prescribed fire area that we've done thinning in. This area looks like we just did another prescribed fire. So, that's okay. Some cool lightning scar activity that we saw. When we talked about legacy trees, these are the type of things that the fire sometimes helps harden the bark as well. So if there's another fire, then it's even stronger against it. So, maybe this is one of our future legacy trees. We were always thinking about trying to find a good picture of a legacy tree. Here's one that's got the big fat branches. It's starting to flatten out a little bit. It's got the bigger reddish bark, no lower branches. So that's kind of the beginning of a legacy tree there.
Stefan, while you're on
Before
that
you go
topic,
on,
Sure.
There's been a question about the bark.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell us about the bark thickness and how it might vary on younger or older trees?
Yeah, I mean that's why the older trees do survive wildfire, and a lot of the smaller trees do perish. And the goal of ponderosa pine is to survive the low intensity wildfires. And so the true structure of a lower montane ponderosa pine forest should have a lot more of the bigger trees. I shouldn't say a lot. They should have a certain number of big trees. And then maybe there's a pocket of small trees that are starting to get established, and that they might get lucky and just get the lower limbs burned off during a low intensity wildfire. But there should be more larger trees on the landscape versus the smaller ones. Just another video here. So that's what I have for the photos. So if you hold on 1 second, I will bring up the another screen here and share that. Can you, what do you see right now? Anything?
Well, there was a map, but it left.
Okay, let me try that again. It was blocking my view of the screen. That's why I had to move it. Can you see that now? Oh no, I didn't hit share. There we go. Can
There
you
we
see?
go. Yep, that's good.
You can see the map and you can see my hand?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a map that we brought over to the incident command post so they could see where we did treatments, and so they could have an idea of where things were done. And like I said, most of our good survival was really in this section. This area up here didn't see the fire yet. Fire is still active out there, so I can't say if more is going to burn right now or not. I don't know. But at this point, this is where kind of all of our survival was, in these areas. So again, trying to, possibly correlating it with the survival is, I'm going to try to open one more map and share that because this was the, okay, so you can see this one now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is right now the current boundaries of the fire. And I want to save time for questions, so I'm just going to say a couple quick things here. But right now, the biggest concerns are this location on the southern boundary, because it is steep, rocky, very poor access, and really, really hard to get containment line around. At one point, I don't know what's going on with the dozer, but I know at one point they were hoping to do some dozer lines on this far edge to really hem the fire in, so that if we get winds that come out of the north and head south, that it could be contained, and we're not worried about Jamestown and Springdale down at the bottom here. So they're really concerned about this area. And then the other thing is this right here, all this drops down to the St. Vrain. And so they are also really concerned from this DP 50 all the way to where it touches Highway 7, because it's really, again, steep terrain, hard to control, hard to hem in, hard to build line in. So these are the two areas. And so that's why they're so concerned with the town of Lyons, because if it can get in here or even cross over into here, the Lyons can be threatened from this fire. And so that's what they're working on now. That's what they're spending all their time on now. This was the really active area today, where there was a lot of air support, a lot of helicopter drops and water support. Up here, I'm not sure what was going on, because I didn't have a vantage point and I didn't have their communications on my radio. But this is where we're at. So I think the next part is to open to questions, and I can tell you there's probably going to be a lot of questions I don't have answers for, but I can do my best. So.
And there are lots of questions that I'm sure don't have answers, but people are asking for your professional opinion. So let's get started. One quick question: do you know what's in the red fire retardant? You said it was soapy and wet. Do you have?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head what the ingredients are, but part of the reason for the soapy action is so that it stays wet longer. Mm-hmm. So that it works better when it's wet. Once it dries, it's just it's not slowing down fire. But I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, and your best guess about when the trails might be open? Obviously the fire has to get under control
first. Is on this call. I think there's a few things. I know that the bridge that goes up on Wapiti was also lost. So that trail, there's no way, there's a gulch there, and the two bridges are gone. So they'll have to figure out ways to mitigate that. And then there's going to have to be some kind of hazard tree assessment on all the trails to make sure that we don't have trees that are going to fall quickly onto the trails. And so there's a lot that has to be done. I really don't have a best guess, and Patrice might have an answer.
What I would just add is that we will definitely have to have it closed for a long time to fix the bridges, assess all the trees, make sure the trails are cleared and safe. But what else is going to happen after this is we're going to go into restoration mode, where you're trying to mitigate the impacts of a huge rain event on all of this burned terrain. So there will be aerial helicopters doing seeding or mulching or all kinds of different activities. So it's going to be a while before this will be ready to be opened safely again.
And are there any other policies about post-fire treatment besides what you just described, Therese?
Well, what happens after a fire like this, and like Stefan said, it's about half on the Forest Service and half on county and private land. And so the next step is to do a burned area emergency response. And that gets soil scientists and plant ecologists and weed specialists all together, and foresters, and look at the burn severity in this area. And then also look at the values at risk. So what's downstream, what's downhill from this drainage that was really severely burned? Are there culverts? Are there roads? Are there houses that you need to mitigate? So those would be priority areas that we would target for treatment. And then that group decides what kind of treatment. So in areas where you saw the flat top, where it's not going to hold, we're not going to see a lot of soil movement with a high rain event, that might just be a little weed control. And some areas might include seeding and mulching and wattles to stop, the rivulets of water coming down this unprotected soil into the drainage that then gets into Left-Hand Creek. And it might be even increasing, like replacing culverts so that they can hold a higher flow of water. So it's a whole process to get that assessment, and then also to get the funding to do it. So all those things are the next steps that we're starting to think about.
And funding comes from?
So primarily, two different things for funding. When, like for the suppression, which is all the stuff that Stefan's just been talking about, there are crews that have come from Nebraska and Oregon and New Mexico, and they're all part of the suppression. And just as a point of reference, after the first 3 days, this fire cost $1.4 million. and we're not done yet. And so this could easily be between $5 and $10 million by the time everything is finished. So that typically the Forest Service covers the expenses for the percentage of the fire that the Forest Service that is on Forest Service land. And then the county will need to come up, the county and the state will need to come up with the suppression costs for the stuff that's on county and state and private land. And then as far as the restoration goes, that typically the Natural Resources Conservation Service, the federal government, NRCS, they have an emergency watershed protection program, and that funding is for cases exactly like this. We all know the primary drainage this goes into is Left-Hand Canyon, as Left-Hand Creek, and Left-Hand is a water supply for a huge number of people who live in Boulder County. And so protecting that watershed will be paramount. So that's what that NRCS money will help cover. And we'll have to, you know, typically it's 75% federal money and then 25% local and state match.
Great. By comparison, just to give us a sense of how many millions of dollars, the kind of helicopter thinning and treatment that Stefan has described to us that has taken place over the last couple of years, what's the ballpark amount of money that was devoted to that work?
So on this property, we only did one project, and that project was 1.1 million to do 160 acres. Roughly, you can expect roughly $8,000 an acre to do helicopter logging.
So in comparison, it looks like a good investment to me.
If it works.
Yeah, yeah. Great. So let me move on to another of these good questions that people have asked. Someone asked, right off the top of your head, lessons learned that might be applicable to other open space ponderosa forests, just based on your first blush ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we always say this, Teresa and I say this all the time is, wow, I wish we had thinned more and done more. And it's, you know, it's hard to balance values sometimes. I mean, we have wildlife issues that we want to make sure we're keeping thermal cover or closed canopies. And so, but you know, doing more. Having said that, I think that, you know, in these events, I don't know what would stop that. I don't even know if it was grasslands all the way up there, I mean, of course, there's not as much heat generated from grasslands. It's flashy, but you know, I don't know what would have changed it. I mean, it was a wind-driven event, and you know, when you see these wind-driven events, it just does significant damage. And you know, I think what I'm getting at is you can't really design something for this, you know, 99th percentile type of event. There's just, it's not that way. We you know, when we designed this project, we thought that, you know, there's a chance there might be a fire, and it might be pretty intense, but we didn't think it was going to be at this level.
I would add that talking to the firefighters that came from across the country that were out there working on the lines, I said, you know, we've done some forest thinning up here, and they said, we can tell this looks really good compared to other places we have been. And like Stefan showed, that previous map that had the green area in the middle, we have done over 700 acres of some sort of treatment, be it thinning and prescribed burn, thinning twice and prescribed burn, and then the last one, which was the helicopter logging. So I think it definitely shows. I love the map that he showed before, where you can still see all those green trees compared to all the black on the west side where it was just too steep for us to do anything. Mm-hmm. So I definitely think an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yep.
Nice. Just to go back a step, Stefan, could you please clarify what a dozer line is versus a hand line?
Sure. I mean a dozer. I mean bulldozer. So basically, it is a bulldozer that will clear a dirt line to hold just to keep a line that fire cannot cross on the ground. So it is a dozer. So where we put those, actually, the few locations, can you see my hand here? There's a meadow right here. We did it, there's an old 2-track that's on that meadow, and it joined where it says Quartz Way. It's actually called Pyrite, but it goes from here to that Sandstone Drive, and so it's a blade length, which is roughly a 2-track road length, or width, excuse me, that went through here. And then there's also a old road that kind of drops down, goes around this box canyon, and then eventually gets over to where it says DP60. And they started working on that. I think they got to right about where the D is there, at the top of the D. And they were using that old road, and just so, you know, an old road is going to have grass on it and things like that. So they want to make sure that that's devoid of vegetation. A hand line is typically it's built by a crew, and so one of the best ways to think about how they do it, it's actually fairly neat. Let's say you have 10 people in a row. Each person has a tool. You take one hit with your tool, you move over, and then you do it again, and everyone's following in line. And by the time that last person is there, you have a 2 to 3 foot line that again, where the vegetation is removed. A lot of times when they build those kind of lines, then they burn off those. So then they have black, because fire cannot burn through something that's already gone. And so they use them as kind of their anchor points to hold in a fire.
While you're still on the map, Stefan, can you sort of take your hand and describe what area is private, what is U.S. Forest Service, what is county?
So starting back here is, Ballarat and Calwood. Calwood, we have conservation easements on the land back here, so it's not ours. It's still technically private land, but we do have conservation easements on it. This whole area, kind of right in the middle here, is all Forest Service land, and kind of comes up, this backside a little bit over here. And down through here. Private land, there's really not that much acreage. So I'm going to take the hand, or the cursor right here, this line right to about here, and then back over to DP70. That's where the 2 neighborhoods are that were affected by the fire. So that's private land. And then there's, like I said, there's a few pockets that the Oaks family has in the center of all this. But most of this was Forest Service and Parks and Open Space land.
Thanks. And I gather that this development up at the top that you were talking about with quartz and sandstone roads is the reason why there's been so much aerial activity dropping up here for the last couple of days. Is they're trying to prevent the northward movement of that fire?
Yeah, and I think what they're looking at is if we can't control it in this location, then we can't even control it as it moves towards Lyons proper. So it's not just Lyons Estates. We really want to make sure it stays in this footprint, if the best of our abilities.
And they actually evacuated Lyons Park Estates, which is right above that DP60. That neighborhood of Lyons is evacuated tonight because of the high winds.
Yeah, right in there.
And while we're on the winds coming up again, what can you say about what's predicted about weather for the next couple of days?
So I have not seen the weather, if anything's been updated, but I know there is snow in the forecast, possibly Thursday night, I think is what they said. And then also again on Sunday. So we're really hoping that we can get through the wind events and then have that moisture show up, because that is really the thing that will put this to bed is having some moisture. Doesn't necessarily mean it will put it out. I mean, we obviously saw that with the Cameron Peak fire. They had, some areas upwards of 10 inches of snow, and then it made that huge run towards Masonville. So, so you can't be definitive, But
All you need is more wind.
we need snow. We need that moisture, and snow typically, because we never get those really, except for when we have a flood. We don't really get those drenching events except during a certain time of the year. So we really need the snow to kind of sit on it. We've done this with our prescribed fires up here, where we've timed our prescribed fires to occur 1 or 2 days before a snow event, so that we know we feel comfortable that after the prescribed fire that it's going to stay where it is.
Good. I want to shift gears to wildlife a little bit. You showed and described the turkeys. When I was up there hiking, I ran into Rick Adams, who was doing some of his bat research up there.
Batman.
My guess is he hasn't been up there, and you don't know what the status of the bat colony is.
Yeah, nobody is supposed to be up there unless they are, a part of the fire. Having said that, I did go near Ingersoll Quarry, and that's, it burned. So I have no idea how it's going to affect the bat populations. We'll just have to see. I saw deer. I talked to firefighters that saw a few bears down in the canyons. Specifically, let's see if I can find it here. This canyon right here. They saw a bear in there. I saw. They also saw elk out over here. I saw a few aberts running around. So I don't know what these. I don't know what they do when the fire hits. I don't know why there were so many turkeys still. I don't know what they did to survive. I don't know, but there were a lot of turkeys.
Interesting. And talk a little bit about, someone asked about whether fire enhances cone formation in future years, whether the trees that got burned, like some plants put a lot of energy into flowering after some event. Is there anything similar on pine trees?
I am not sure. I've never really looked into that. I do know that, typically seeding from ponderosa pine is heavily reliant on moisture, and bumper crops come from really wet springs, and so that typically happens. But that's a very good question. But I don't have an answer. I can try to look it up and maybe get back to people with it. But I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, and just Therese and Stefan, for your information, someone expressed a genuine interest in helping to survey for life forms. If you have the kind of thing that people can help by getting out there and helping with surveys. So there's interest in the volunteer community to do that kind of work.
Great. I obviously we can try to hook them up with our, when we start are able to do volunteer programs again, maybe we could hook them up with our wildlife biologists and see if there's something that can be done. I just had a thought going back to that question about seeding. One thing I do know is that if there's a seed source, ponderosa pine seedlings really like to get established in bare mineral soil. And so there is, if we didn't scorch the soil, it might be more receptive to some regeneration. Unfortunately, some of the latest research has said that fire has caused, and climate change has actually decreased that normal process.
Good. And one more question about satellite imagery, whether you use any kind of aerial or satellite imagery.
So
both for fire control and for after
So obviously we want to see whatever photos come out next from an aerial standpoint. During the fire, they utilized a plane. It's called a multi-mission aircraft, and they've been flying it over these fires. And the multi-mission aircraft can actually pick up heat signatures off the ground, and so they have used those to identify where the hot spots are, and get that information to ICP, the command staff, so they can make some decisions based off of that.
And that MMA is where this map is generated from. They use the image from that MMA, and my understanding is it flies at 50,000 feet, like higher than a jet engine, than a normal passenger jet. And so that's where they're getting this map from. And what else I learned is that the MMA, it's owned by the state of Colorado, Department of Fire Prevention and
Control.
DFPC and Control. They will fly all the fires in Colorado in one day. They can go out and get all the fires in Colorado, and that it's been so effective and so useful for fighting these fires that it's actually been dispatched like to Wyoming, because there is the Mullen fire just north of us, and to Arizona. So it's a really, really useful piece of air equipment.
When they were testing it, when they first were trying to figure things out, we actually were able to utilize it over our prescribed fires and find out where hot spots were, so that during our prescribed fire, we could control things better. So it's pretty neat information.
For those of you who are interested in the aerial attacks on fires, you might drive by the Boulder Airport. I went by there today, and you can see a lot of the types of airborne vehicles that are used in the firefighting effort. And I just want to add not only a thank you to Stefan and Therese for giving us this really rich hour-long conversation today, but when the federal folks came in on, was it Monday morning? In the first briefing that they did, they had several compliments for the work that had been done over the weekend before they arrived. And it was clear, just like Therese said, in terms of their compliments on the fire treatments and what they saw there. They were very complimentary about the local work that had been done on retaining the fire footprint before the feds arrived. So thanks to all of you for all the work that you've been doing over the last, 5 days now? And thanks for taking the time to explain this all to us.
Great.
You're welcome. Glad to do it. And Stefan, excellent job. That was really, really informative.
I hope everybody got some good info from it, and I don't want to see it again. I don't want it to happen on any of our other properties, and so I think we will try to think about when the person asked about lessons learned. I think we will start discussing different types of treatments and to figure things out. So that's all I have, but I appreciate everyone showing up and wanting to know and learn and listen, and it's not an exact science, and we're still trying to figure things out. I actually think that this whole scenario could be 2 or 3 people's master's thesis or doctoral thesis. They can look at all the data that we had leading up to our prescriptions, and they can look at our prescriptions and see how the fire behaved. And so I think there's, really good learning experience for us as well.
You won't be surprised to know that Tim Seastad has generated a whole page of questions already. Thanks again. I'm sorry to say that we're out of time, but we certainly will look towards having some follow-up discussions as you all get a chance to rest and get some distance from all this and learn more as we go forward. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.